All right, good morning and welcome to week 5 of the course. So what I want to go over today is chapter 5 in your textbook, and then I will set us up with our discussion board activity. And let me get this shared. Okay, there we go. All right, so in chapter 5, we're going to talk about a little bit about revision strategies. And, I recognize that we still have a couple weeks until you're submitting your project. So you may not be at that stage of revision yet, of course. But I think that revision is actually a process that occurs really throughout the writing process. So it's not just a step at the end. There's a lot of conflation between editing and proofreading, but they really are two separate things. The proofreading is something that people do as they go. It also comes late in the process too, but editing is something where you're just constantly revisiting what you're working on, and it can save you a lot of time to do this throughout the process. So the first part is to review for purpose. You always want to keep in mind what is the purpose of your project. And for this essay, it's a common ground argument over some kind of controversial issue. People are going to disagree about the issue. You're trying to reach out to an opposing view and demonstrate that you have a solution that actually can benefit them. So what you do is you think about your paper from the perspective of your audience. One of the sample topic ideas I've talked about before is how to lower housing costs. And there are going to be people who say that we need government mandated rent controls that limit the amount that someone can charge for rent in a space. And there obviously are going to be people who disagree with that. Someone who is kind of libertarian minded, maybe, who thinks that would be an unjust government intrusion upon the marketplace, that it'd be kind of an artificial control and just interfere with economic growth. Like, someone's going to have that perspective. Someone would say if some place is too expensive, you just move. Supply and demand takes care of everything. So obviously, those are two very different perspectives on what the role of government in civic life. So a common ground solution is going to have to address that. You can't just argue for some big government program when the opposing side is just never really going to see it that way. So while that can be your view, your approach of the essay is needs to be something else, and so it could be something like a change to zoning laws between commercial and residential spaces. Like, there are certain cities where if you have a building that's a commercial building, you can't have any residential space on it or in it. And if you were to take away some of those rules, you could build apartments on top of retail spaces. Some cities have that. And just, that's one of many approaches that you could take. You could open up certain, public land for development. That's going to be something people are a little bit leery about, but I'm not really talking about excuse me. Excuse me. I'm not really talking about like public parks or something, but there are a lot of cities that own property that just sits vacant and nothing happens to it. So there are ways to do that too. You could build up transit within cities to connect parts that are less inhabited, et cetera. So you have kind of a multifaceted approach. But the thing is, anything that you do that meets your objective of reducing housing costs and also reduces the amount of government restrictions and policies and things has the potential to reach a common ground audience. Now, I say this now because if that's your objective, what can happen as you're writing is that you kind of forget your purpose and you just start advocating your belief, and you fall back into that mode of just making a kind of aggressive argument for your position. But that's not really what you want to do in this essay. You want a more nuanced approach that reaches out to the opposing side. So you kind of question yourself, is your writing directed towards the audience? Are your main points strong and clear? Tone, attitude, reception, those are all things that you can review as you go through this process. Peer and instructor reviews. So this is going to be something that happens kind of throughout this process. With this discussion board in particular, I'm going to give you feedback on your introduction. And next week, by next Monday, you need to be ready to submit a rough draft. It doesn't have to be complete, but it should be pretty far along, because remember the essay is due 2 weeks from yesterday. So we have 13 days for the completed version. And so we're going to spend the next couple of weeks online developing that. So we do the introduction today and this week on the discussion board, and then the draft we do starting next week. You do your revisions, you turn in the final. So, okay, so peer and instructor reviews. When I do the peer review activity, I will have a set of questions that you will answer about one of your classmates' essays. I'll have instructions on there about, how to choose an essay, which one you're going to review and stuff. But you're going to answer some questions. You give their classmate that feedback. They then choose how best to address that. My feedback, obviously it's going to be a little more extensive, and it's really about the criteria for this essay, making sure that you're hitting on all the points. And also, we need to think about this essay and its potential to be expanded into a major research project, because that is our ultimate objective, is to take this 3 to 5 page essay, turn it into an 8 to 10 page essay. You do not do that by just writing another 6 pages. You have to go back to your work and you think about what areas to expand. You reimagine the project on a larger scope, more depth in terms of research. Yes?
Can you add more stuff to it, as in more areas that you put in there into your paper?
Yes, so you can expand its scope, is what I would call that, where you, for the short essay, you're focused on a kind of narrow topic. You broaden that, you talk about new things, so that the first essay is one component of a larger project. That is definitely one method you can use for that. And okay, so then editing and proofreading, as I said, are kind of different operations, but proofreading is where you're really looking for errors. And for most writers, like if I were to list the most common sentence level errors in writing, and whether it's comma splices or sentence fragments, lack of parallel structure, all these different things, it's very common that a writer's going to have 2 or 3 of those things that they do most often, and they won't really have those other mistakes very often. So it's not very common for someone to just have all the top 10 mistakes all throughout their essay. What you'll do is you'll have a mistake and you'll repeat the same mistake 5, 6, 7 times in one essay. And part of what I'm trying to do in the course is to get you to develop a really strong understanding of what the sentence level weaknesses are present in your writing, which ones, and how best to address them. And then you start to recognize them. We also work on style. Style is not quite the same as a mistake. It's there are grammatically correct sentences that can be weak stylistically. And so we'll talk about how to adopt a really active, elegant style of prose that is going to get your message across and also is going to engage your reader. So that's going to involve me choosing some individual sentences, talking about how you might reword that and why you might consider that revision. And in this kind of editing, you want to go through your essay several times. You look at the word level, the sentence level, the paragraph level, and you do those as 3 separate steps. So you have a very focused kind of editing that maybe would miss some of the larger conceptual issues. And then you have a kind of larger conceptual type of editing that isn't really laser focused on comma use, but that you do both and you go over your essay several times as you do this. The one thing that you want to avoid is to finish your essay at 11:45 p.m. and turn it in at 11:50 p.m. on the day that it's due. You want it to be done, hopefully, at least a day beforehand, so you have some time to go through and edit. I realize that this is not always going to be the case. It's not as if I've always done that. I mean, I had plenty of essays that, were slipped under the door, hours before class. I mean, and before drop boxes, professors would have you just submit it under their office door. And in graduate school, I had a key to the building, so I was already in there. I just kind of pull it all-nighter, finish the essay, print it off, slide it under the door. It's not a very good way to work. Creates a lot of stress, creates a lot of fatigue, but sometimes, you got to do what you have to do. But what I'm trying to do, and what I've tried to develop for myself, are some better methods, and I try to impart those, onto you. But all of us, I think, in a sense, we manage our schedules, we manage our own procrastination, and that's why I try to build in some activities to help at least get you started on these projects. Okay, and formatting. So we are going to spend some time on MLA. The Zoom session on Wednesday is going to be going to offer some instruction on MLA. I'll work you through some resources that'll put the citations together for you, and you'll see a properly formatted MLA document. Your textbook actually has a sample common ground essay that you could look at. I think it's chapter 13 is where you can find that. We'll go over that as well, but you can see sort of how that's structured. And I assign the essay in MLA. You can use APA if you wish. That's fine. You could also use Chicago style. I want you to just use whatever you're most likely to use going forward in your classes. Makes sense to use that now. So I'm not particular about the style, just that you choose a style and that you follow its guidelines. So there's a series of tips here about that as well. And then you have a final overview. You are permitted to use images in this essay. And in the larger research paper, it's very likely that you're going to use images and charts. So it's not required for the short essay, but you can. And that's one of the things to check in editing as well. Make sure all references are included and cited correctly. Any spelling issues, use the same style and font throughout. Little details like that are things that you go over towards the end. Okay, so that pretty much is chapter 5. So it offers some tips on revision, and before we get to that point in here, We also are going to do an introduction and outline. So in the week 5, yeah, here we go, week 5 folder, I have a discussion board activity. So you're going to post your introduction for your 3 to 5 page common ground essay, along with an outline of your current plans for the project. So, so I have a few tips about introductions that I want to share that you can think about as you work on this. So overall, being mindful of your reader, I think, is essential to any project, particularly this one, where you're speaking directly to someone who has a view that's in opposition to you. And you know, if you do get stuck writing the intro, I mean, keep in mind that the introduction at this stage is somewhat of a placeholder. You're going to go back and revise it as you write the body of the essay. And writing the body of the essay is often a good way to get your introduction jump started. The intro should be a roadmap for your reader. So you want to set out to preview all of your main points and give us a sense of the structure of this essay and what type of ground it's going to cover. You want to make your intro interesting and exciting for the reader. So you start off with an anecdote, like a story or a statistic or something that's going to get our attention. And avoid using dictionary definitions to start off. So you wouldn't want to say Webster's defines, you know, this as this. Like, so instead of that, you just try to adopt a more engaging approach that's going to lead the reader into it. And like I said, telling a story about your relationship to this topic, a story about someone who has experienced the issue you're talking about, that can often get the reader in the right frame of mind. So I look forward to reading your introductions, and I will have some comments on those for you as well as we go through the week. And that will now conclude our Zoom session, and you're free to take this time to work on that intro, that outline, and I will be in touch on the discussion board.